Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Same Old Arsenal podcast. We're back after a 2-week break. The boys are with me. Hello, Cookie. How are you?
Hello, Amanda. I'm very well, thank you. How's yourself?
Very good. Much better than it would have been last night, the podcast, wouldn't it? Much better. Suburban Gooner, who just popped to the loo and poured a beer, and we're just all waiting for the diva, as we call him in our WhatsApp group. How's the diva doing?
You're muted, mate.
You're muted. We can't hear you. Do you want to? Not
We
even
said
ready.
we'd go live at 7:30. We went live at 7:30. I don't see what the problem is.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what the problem is. There's no problems tonight because if we would have recorded last night, then what would have happened was we'd have been a bit more miserable, but we'll get to that in a moment. So, everybody, last couple of weeks, the reason I had a break was last Friday night when you was all watching the City game, Carl took me for my Christmas present to watch a few of the Invincibles down in Southend. And it was the weirdest experience being with 1,600 Gooners, Perry Groves, Gilberto Silva, Ray Parler, and Loren. And Arsenal were playing. So you can only imagine how weird this was because people were on their phones. People kept looking to see results. I didn't even bother because I knew we'd know. And obviously, it didn't go well that night, but we had a brilliant night. And I can't tell you how much more in love with Gilberto I am. Oh, my life. Parler was just as brilliant and funny as ever. And Lauren was just great. Perry Groves was brilliant. And they asked us if we wanted to ask any questions to tweet it. And I did. And they read my question out. And the week before, it was the same question I asked Freddie Lundberg. When did you finally realise during the Invincibles year when we were going to win it? And yeah, it was really, really good evening. So obviously we lost. I wasn't we weren't going to do a podcast anyway. It's not because we lost, it's because we didn't have one planned. And then we just sort of saunter on to this week. So boys, Goodison Park. So this week I was interviewed on Toffee TV by a very despondent Everton fan, Baz, who is fantastic. And I had a 20-minute interview with him about our upcoming game. And these are my words to him. I can't see us winning it. I can only see a draw. We've got the new manager bounce. We've got the fact that we don't do well at your ground and a few others as well. And he said, if we even get a draw, I think I'm just going to celebrate. But if we win, I didn't think they'd win, if I'm honest, Cooks. I didn't think they were going to win it, but I thought we were going to get a draw. And then we didn't. So just give us your overall view of yesterday. Take us through the game.
Well, I'm going to try and not do what I've done that you've criticised me of in previous weeks and go from the first minute to the last minute in my opening statement. So I'll try and keep this as brief as I possibly can do. I felt very much the same as you going into the game. I wasn't particularly confident. It would be wrong to not feel confident that we were going to win because I think given the results we've had and the performances we're playing, and from my point of view, I was looking at this from the perspective of we've overcome so many tests this season. You know, the United game, going to Spurs and winning there. We've got all this hoodoo off our backs. You know, it's a tough game. We're coming up against Sean Dyche. We've got the new manager bounce. It's Goodison Park, but we've come over tougher games this season. And in that first 10 minutes, I just thought something about it just doesn't quite feel right. So, yeah, I mean, I am bitterly disappointed with the result, and it didn't go our way on the day, but I think it's really important to have a bit of clarity in times like this and just not overreact because every team is going to have games like this at some point. And I think you've got to say fair play to Everton because they were really good. They showed so much passion, so much aggression. Sean Dyche, I think he gets a lot of stick, and none of us are really enthusiastic about the way he plays football and the way he sets his teams up. But he is also a very good tactician. I think you've got to admit that. And when he gets a bit of money behind him, which he will at Everton, you would assume, not like he has at Burnley in the past, if he's allowed to spend a bit of money, I actually think they could build a really good team. And although it might sound a little bit absurd, they could genuinely have a really good end to this season. I know they're in a tough place now, but if you look how tight it is, in those bottom 10 teams, they could genuinely make a good push towards the top 10. It might be a bit too soon to say that this season, but I think give them a bit of time, they'll do really, really well. So yeah, I'm very despondent about the result yesterday, but I'm certainly not throwing my toys out the pram. It is what it is. Thankfully, Spurs did us a favour this evening, which I'm sure we'll talk about a bit later, but still so much to be positive about. So yeah, let's keep a bit of perspective and not overreact.
There is, isn't there? I mean, I'm not going to mention names of people that I tweet with or got annoyed with last night. But there was a big thing about this, wasn't there? And Rich the Gooner has said, not a great display, but we move on. Too many fans have thrown their toys out the pram. Just what you were saying, Cookie. So, Chris, what's your take on that? I mean, you can talk about the game, obviously, but what's your take on this initial reaction of like dread, fear? I find it a little bit embarrassing.
As in the fear that we've lost and therefore, it's the walls are going to come crumbling down, that kind of fear.
I think what I've noticed is people like to be right. So it's like, we're not going to do this. We didn't buy anyone decent in January, which we're going to discuss in a moment. And they just wait. They wait for the loss. Instead of like putting it into perspective, going with 5 points clear, City still have to play Tottenham the next day. I don't think any of us thought Tottenham would win it, but with might have chance of a point. They are a little bit, City Spurs is a bit like us and Everton. So there's a little chance there. City are not as good as people think. And we have one loss. We weren't at the races. We didn't turn up. He got the crowd going. If we'd have played them a week before, we probably would have beaten 4-0. But I'm just talking about this immediate reaction to, oh my God, we're done.
Yeah, I think the natural human reaction is to almost gravitate towards the lowest sort of, or the worst case possible scenario. And I do the same thing as well. So if anyone actually reads the nonsense that I put out every day, I'm very, very similar. I'm quite pessimistic. And that's actually, for me, just it's a self-preservation mechanism. It's about me trying to protect my own emotions, because I'm so emotionally invested with Arsenal, because basically since the age of about 7, it's become my obsession. And that's too many decades that I don't actually want to go into for fear of people finding out my age. But you're going to say, well, you're a whippersnapper, but we'll move away from that. But it is that kind of, for me personally, it's that preservation, the personal self-preservation thing. So I immediately looked towards the negative. So as soon as that final whistle went yesterday, and I saw we'd lost to the team that was second from bottom and on a terrible run, my immediate thoughts were, this time tomorrow evening, we're going to be 2 points away from City. And the media narrative is going to be, they're chasing them down. They're chasing them down. Let's forget the fact that we would have had a game in hand. And our game in hand is Everton at home. Now, Everton have just beaten us away, but there is absolutely... Do I want to say this?
Don't say no chance.
No, don't you dare.
No. I was sorry. I was going to say there's no way that they will put in the identical performance that they put in yesterday. I cannot see it. If they apply the same tactics, maybe... But I think that it's a very different scenario with Arsenal at home. I think that, they were buoyed by a very boisterous, and they always are, by a boisterous Everton support. I think that got them up. I think it's a new horizons, fresh beginnings, Sean Dyche era that kind of lifted them a little bit, and the players were lifted with it. We play them in probably, I don't know if the game's been decided, it's probably in about a month or so. But when we do play them, it will be a very different match. And that's our game in hand. And I would expect us to win that. So we win that. And regardless of what would have happened today with Man City and Spurs, and we're still 5 points clear, even with that defeat. But hindsight is 2020. And the hindsight today, which is why I find myself incredibly chilled right now when we're going to be analysing this game, is that we're still 5 points clear. I'm looking at that league table. All that's happened this weekend is that we are one game closer towards the end of the season, and we are still 5 points clear of Man City.
With a game in hand.
With the game in hand now. Yeah. Do you know what? It's very funny you should say it's like that coping mechanism. My dad is the same. My dad is negative 24/7. If we score 1, he'll go, we've got to get 4. it's his way of protecting himself because he loves the club so much. And it's a way of going, just to the protection I get. Now, I'm a little bit opposite because weirdly in my life, I'm quite negative, but with my Arsenal world, I'm quite positive. So for me, I went, well, we're still 5 points clear. They haven't played yet. We'll still be 2 points clear and we'll have a game in hand. We still got to play them. They're not playing that well. I honestly didn't think they'd lose to Spurs. But when Harry Kane got the first goal, I thought there's a good chance they're going to do this Tottenham this time. So I was more positive last night. And I think I was just appreciative of what we've seen this season. And I just feel some fans, and there's not that many, but some fans need to appreciate what we have done. We've gone above and beyond what any of us expected. If I told you, Christopher and James, on the 1st of August, that we'd be sitting here on the 5th of Feb, 5 points clear with a game in hand, you'd have sent me to the funny hospital, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. It's more than we could have hoped for. We're in an amazing position. We are still in the driving seat. We are going to have games like this. I think for me personally, one of the things that worried me the most about yesterday was actually not the result. So when we lost to Man United in September, we battered them. And after that game, I came out of it angry because it's like, oh, we always go to Old Trafford and lose, even when we're the better team. But a few wins later, and I'm thinking, yeah, well, we battered them. This season, for the whole of the season, and even the Leeds game, in the first half, I thought we were the better team against Leeds. Leeds battered us in the second half, and the stats kind of skewed that towards suggesting that, well, Leeds United were the better team. They probably should have got a win. But we really had them in control in that game at Elland Road. But this was the first game yesterday where I watched an Arsenal team that was second best in terms of chance creation, second best in terms of like the good key moments, like the big chances. I think we might have had one big chance, whereas Everton had 4. And we can all relive them if we want to, but I don't particularly want to. But for me personally, it was more the performance. I would be sitting here a lot more comfortable if we'd have absolutely destroyed Everton yesterday, had 25 shots on goal, and it just wasn't our day, but they got a penalty or a scabby sort of goal from a corner, which is what they got. I would almost probably feel more comfortable today. My worry is, are we going to see more of those performances? Because if you see more of those performances, particularly away from home, then that's when it's going to start getting a little bit scary.
Okay, so first of all, I'm really sorry I didn't say hello to everyone in the chat room. And thank you so much for coming along and supporting us. And with all your comments that are brilliant. And we're going to get to some of them in a moment. Thank you for joining us. Absolutely. Amesy, it's lovely to see you. Doesn't matter, you're a bit late. And it's great to see Simon Lester. Let's see what your point is, because I want to get to this actually. Welcome to the show, Simon. Dyche knew that he had to double up on Saka and Martinelli. His plan worked well. Sadly, we couldn't exploit the space that those tactics created elsewhere. So, Cookie, the one thing I wanted to talk about was Martinelli. How much do you think he's missing Jesus?
A lot, to be honest. If you look at where our average players were position-wise in the game yesterday, you've got almost everyone drifting over to Saka's right-hand side, and then you've got poor little Gabby on his own in the left. And I guess that kind of works in one of two ways. It's quite nice to have the attention off Martinelli in a way, because not all teams are going to do what Everton does. And if we're putting all of our energies on the right-hand side, we can do exactly what we did in the game against Brighton away, and Ødegaard play another one of those beautiful balls through to an unoccupied Martinelli who's making a brilliant run. So it works, as I say, in one of two ways. But the problem is when you're playing against a team like Everton, who, as that comment says, double up on our wingers, which have been so pivotal to the way we play. And it's also not working for us through the middle in terms of Eddie, because he's been fantastic in the time he's been leading the line since Jesus has been out. But he doesn't do the dropping deep and holding up the ball and bringing others into the game as well as Jesus does. But arguably, his finishing and goal scoring ratio has been better. So, kind of everything with every player. That's something we've got to be realistic about. And Jesus just brings out the best in Martinelli. But to kind of caveat that a little bit, I do also think that it didn't help that Ødegaard didn't have his best game, because something we've spoken about previously is that we've got all these different players who can make things happen out of nowhere. It could be Partey, Xhaka, Saka, Martinelli, Eddie, but not one of those was having a really good game. And I feel like we could have gotten away with Everton doubling up on our wide men if Ødegaard was having his usual standard of performance. But because he wasn't, because Xhaka was fairly ineffective, because Partey didn't look fit, because the game was so slow and there was no space for us to exploit. I don't know if you guys felt it, but the pitch just felt so congested all of the time. Every time we went forward, Everton brought everybody back, literally everybody, defended for their lives. And you've got to credit to them because we had nothing to exploit. And the very, very few occasions we countered and countered at speed, we got it wrong. We just got it wrong every single time.
So does it concern you, Chris, that really we knew this was going to happen? We sort of knew they were going to throw everything at us, sit back and then throw it at us on the break. Does Arteta have a plan B? Because we tried to play our game yesterday, and I'll come back to Martinelli and Jesus because a lot of people have been talking about this. I want to talk about Zinni and Tierney yesterday as well. So do you think he has a plan B? Because as Trev Hill, who I love to pieces, welcome to the show, Trev, said, we've not turned up at Goodson for the last 3 seasons. It's becoming our bogey ground. We consistently underperform for some reason. Now, Arteta would have known that. He's been there the last 3 seasons. Do you think he's got a plan B for teams like this? Like Newcastle, obviously, and, the same thing.
I think yes, because we have a different... He's built the squad with a variety of different skill set across those players. So Martinelli not quite working. Martinelli is very, very direct. He wants to get the ball head down. He wants to run. He wants to use his pace. Trossard is very different, 2-footed. He likes to come inside, come out, go outside. And so that was an option. So he's built a squad with that in mind as a plan B. I think, as Cookie was just saying, I think it was just some really poor execution yesterday. I thought that Partey, Zinchenko, Xhaka, Ødegaard, they were quite poor. I could see a replica of what happened with Newcastle. I could see what they were doing with Martinelli and Saka. You double up, your left winger, your right winger works in tandem with the left fullback and the right fullback. You close down the space and you press them and you try and neutralise them. I could see that. And then 3 sitting in the midfield, those 3 midfielders, with Doucouré dropping in, you just drop in, you congest the space. So you can see the blueprint, and it's exactly what Newcastle did. But Arteta did try and counter that. But what I will say is that some of the chances that we had, where some of our finishing was atrocious, like there's the ball into Ødegaard and he's lifted it into the roof of of whatever is stand behind the goal, the Everton stand behind the goal. Nketiah drops a shoulder, gets beyond his man in the first half and has a shot. Like he's basically just him and Pickford. And his shot was high, wide, and not handsome. It was horrible. Saka had a shot which was cleared off the line, but there were loads of it felt to me like we had about 5 or 6 chances where we've just ballooned the ball into the stands. So it just felt like in the penalty box yesterday it was terrible. And it's that hoodoo that I can't remember who it was that said that in the chat. It seems to be that kind of response, that kind of situation with Everton. I mean, maybe it was slightly different last season. We were poor yesterday, but we were atrocious last season. Yesterday, you could almost say the whole Dyche has changed the way in which Everton set up. They had a very specific game plan. He was very clever from a tactical perspective. So yesterday wasn't as bad as last season, but it still was bad. And I just think we had a really bad day at the office. And that's what worries me about future games. How many more bad days at the office are we going to get?
But however, as Ainsley said, we have to give credit to Everton. They were desperate for points. They're now, 3rd from bottom, I think. They were bottom. A home game with their fans. Their fans are just as passionate as any other football fans. It's a great old-fashioned ground. Sean Dyche is like Sam Allardyce. I know you do. I know I've got a lot of Everton friends, but you've got to blame me for Ødegaard and Saka's performance yesterday because when I was asked on Toffee TV who's my favourite player at the moment, I couldn't choose between them. And I said, I've done this before. A year before, I went on Merseyside radio and I raved about Ødegaard and he had his worst game. So again, Sorry, guys. I should never. I'm not doing it ever again because this is what happens. And when Ødegaard does have a bad game, he completely goes missing. So okay. So moving on to that, it absolutely bad day at the office. I don't think, Tookie, are you as concerned as Chris is about future games like this? I'm not personally. I think we'll rectify this against Brentford on Saturday, and it's hard to think about Brentford because I keep thinking about City Wednesday week, and we've got to beat Brentford, haven't we, to get the momentum back?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the one thing I would say is that we've won a lot of games this season, particularly away from home, that I wouldn't have expected us to win so comfortably. And that's going right back to the first day of the season against Crystal Palace, because never in a million years did I think we would win that game in the way that we did. I didn't think it was going to be anywhere near as comfortable going to Selhurst Park, because that's been a bogey ground for us, a big bogey ground. And we controlled that game for about 80% of it. It was a bit tough at the end, but we got the result that we deserved. Same going to Brentford away, a ground that we struggled at on the opening day of last season. So many of our competitors at the top end of the table have gone there this season and been absolutely pummeled. We've gone there and it's probably our easiest and most convincing away win of the season. Gone to Brighton, won there, put 4 goals past them. Not a lot of our competitors have gone there and got a result. So we've done very, very, very well to go to these notorious away grounds where teams don't usually let you waltz to victory. And we've done really well to get 3 points a lot of the time in really convincing circumstances. So I can forgive Arsenal for yesterday and say, doesn't mean anything. City lost today. So as far as the table is concerned, nothing's changed. Not got anything to worry about there, but don't let it happen again. We cannot let this happen again, because the one thing I despised about yesterday was it was the Arsenal of old. It's the Arsenal we've seen in the past decade, where it's just a little bit toothless. We're lacking that bit of that passion, as people like to say, the fight, desire, just the basic ingredients of football that we were missing. And, that does come with a psychological aspect that Everton have got the new manager, the crowd's up for it, and you've just got to hold your hands up and say, we lost to the better team, wasn't our day, swallow it, move on. But as I say, we can't let it happen again. And that all starts from that game against Brentford at the weekend, because they've just won 3-0 at the weekend. They're doing very, very well this season, especially since we last played them. So if we win that and we win it well, then we've got City up next. Looking at their recent performances and even looking at how we played against them in the FA Cup with our 6 changes, I really am confident going into that game. So if we win our next 2 games, we're in such a good position. So yeah, it's all in our hands still.
Let's talk about that.
I mean, on one thing.
And remember to remind me to say crowded packed field, because I'm going to forget, Chris, and I want to come to you with that. Go on.
Crowded packed field. I'll remember that.
Just remind me.
The only thing. So just to qualify, as you were saying about like my nerves and stuff. So I'm just going to say one thing and let you jump in, Amanda, on the crowded packed field. But 23rd of February 2008, Eduardo leg break, draw to Birmingham 2-2, and then 1st of March 2008, draw to Villa at home 1-1. 9th of March 2008, draw to Wigan away 0-0. 15th of March, draw to Middlesbrough at home, lose to Chelsea away. And it was only until we got to the 29th of March 2008 that we beat Bolton 3-2 away. But by then the league was done. That's the scar tissue that I personally still bear, because I still remember that time vividly. And that's why, as James said, Brentford now becomes a massive game. If we beat them, imagine if we touch wood, cross fingers, lucky rabbit's hair, all of that sort of stuff. But imagine if we can properly put Brentford to the sword, then this game yesterday becomes a complete irrelevance. And in fact, it becomes less than an irrelevance because Tottenham beat Man City today. So it becomes this weekend might as well not have existed.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hoping for. But yeah, crowded packed field. Go.
Yes, but we're going to just do something. I'm going to come back to that in a sec. But Simon's just told us that Brentford have unbeaten in their last 7. It's going to be a tough game Saturday. To be honest, every single game is a tough game. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But I didn't want to see that, Simon, they're unbeaten in 7.
Yeah, we were Chris, unbeaten in like 20 odd. So
yeah, no, that's fine. But you see, the thing is, this is the first night I haven't watched Match of the Day. in the whole season, because even when we lost to United, I wanted to watch it because I really wanted to see if that goal should have stood and all that. But Chris, you alluded to it earlier before. You said about the midfield was so packed, there was no space. Yeah. So with that in mind, do you think, because I do, that he should have played Tierney instead of Zinni? Might have helped Martinelli as well, but go on.
No, I don't, because I think the form that Zinchenko has shown has been electric, and so I wouldn't have made that change. I think the problem is that the way that we set up, or the way that Everton set up, is that it could have created more space. I mean, what happens is Zinchenko was actually getting closer towards Partey and providing an outlet from a possession point of view. So for us to retain possession is so important. So if you take Tierney out of that, then we lose that ability to control possession. It's a tough one, actually, because hindsight 2020, you think about it and think, well, it didn't work yesterday, so maybe it would have been worth trying something. But I think going into the game, I don't think many Arsenal fans would have said, maybe Tierney for this opponent. I think we thought we're going to control possession.
Chris, I meant during it, when he realised it wasn't working. No, of course not. Right. Absolutely not at the beginning. Sorry, I mean during it, because Carl and I were sitting there going, this game is screaming for Tierney to overlap for Martinelli, and Zinni's got no room in midfield. So this is where I sort of understand a few fans when they do criticise Arteta for not changing things. He did pretty early yesterday, but I sort of thought, we're trying to play our game here and it's not working. We need to do something. Go on.
So I thought, actually, the two moves I probably would have made earlier was Tomiyasu for White, because I thought Ben White was off yesterday, and I thought Tomiyasu has been playing quite well recently. And so, it happens. Players have off periods. Players go through patches. So I would have made that move, Tommy coming on earlier, because I thought he then did better than Ben White when he came on. But actually, Trossard a little bit earlier for Martinelli, because Martinelli was hugging the touchline and he just wasn't getting any joy. Whereas Trossard wants the ball to feet. Trossard just feels like the sort of player that when it's compact, when it's congested, he's got very quick feet. He can move he drops his shoulders quickly. I just feel like he's the sort of player that might have thrived a bit better. And I know he got about 20, 25 minutes. And there's a few people on social media saying he didn't really do anything. And I thought that at the time. But if you give him more time, maybe he can impose himself on the game a little more, is what I thought. So not so much Tierney coming on, but I definitely thought Tomiyasu and Trossard could have been moves that we could have made earlier.
So Cookie, with the Tierney carrying on with that chat, Phil Macker says Zinni had a bad game yesterday, which is unusual for him. So my point is, if you can see a player having a bad game, why not change it? It might have helped Martinelli. It might have helped. I don't know. Obviously, we wouldn't know. And obviously, I mean, look, we all love Zinni, but we all love Tierney, but sometimes you do need to change it.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure Zinchenko is the guy I would have taken off. I definitely would have made a change on that side of the pitch, but I actually think it would have been Xhaka, because I thought he was pretty ineffective yesterday. I don't think he had a stinker by any means, but I just think that left-hand side of the pitch, he just was crowded out every single time, and you've got to hand it to Everton's midfield of Onana, Doucouré, who's barely played this season, and Idrissa Gana Gueye, because they just swamped us. They just swallowed us whole, basically. And I would have been tempted to maybe have moved Zinchenko into Xhaka's role a little bit higher up the pitch and then brought Tierney on at left back, because, like you say, we had no overlapping runs, and it's a bit of a problem in both of our fullback areas, because Ben White does bomb forward, but he hasn't quite got that end product to swing a ball into the box. Tomiyasu, I think he does it a lot better in terms of getting forward than Ben White does, but we've not really got dare I say, a Hector Bellerin type player who's going to just be a traditional fullback and just run up and down the flank and provide overlapping runs. We've not got that in either fullback position. And, that's not too much of an issue because of the way we play. We're not reliant on overlapping runs. That's just not how we play. But I think in this situation where we did need a bit more width, we needed players to run beyond. We didn't necessarily have the time to have it constantly played into feet, which is something that all of our front players want. We just needed a Theo Walcott almost to run in behind and latch onto a forward pass, because we didn't have any runners at all. And that's why I think players like Smith-Rowe, Nelson, when he comes back, they're going to be really good options off the bench. Say what you like about someone like Nelson. I mean, he is someone that gets in behind and runs beyond the defence. So it would be good to have those options. And I think we could have just been a little bit more ambitious in our substitutions because, like we've all said, so many other people have said it, they were very like for like, which, I didn't really take much issue with at the time. But I think, especially when we're a goal down, you've got to kind of be a bit more ambitious, like I say, and maybe take off someone that provides so much importance to the structure, someone like Xhaka, take him off and put Vieira in alongside Ødegaard and just have another attacking option, or keep Martinelli on, but bring on Trossard for someone like Xhaka. I think we could have done that because, I got the Jorginho substitution. I took no issue with it because at the time I thought it was a bit strange to take Partey off, but given that it could be related to his fitness and we want to keep him 100%, no problems there. But in another game, maybe you take Partey off and you bring Trossard on and you just, throw everything at it like we've done in previous games. Because Arteta did do that. We've gone to back threes in the past, but we've not done it this season kind of because we've not had to, but also for the sake of the structure and the balance of the team. So, yeah, that's something I would like to see in the future when we are in these situations, when we're a goal down, just be a bit more inventive with the substitutions, perhaps. Don't do what we did at United and bring on them all at once, because you don't need to do that. But if it's not going our way and we've got 10 minutes to go, just change it up. Give the opposition something to think about. Give them an absolute handful, because if you've got Martinelli, Saka, Trossard, Vieira, Smith Rowe all on the pitch, even Jesus at the same time, then that's going to be hell of a lot for a defence to handle. And Jesus coming back, I think, is going to be massive for us in this last part of the season, because we do miss him in games like this. And same can be said for Smith Rowe as well.
True. A lot of the people in the chat room, including Michael, unrelated to every prince on the planet, so we're probably family, you and I. I would have started Trossard. I'm seeing a lot of these comments in the chat room. So, Chris, would you have started with Trossard instead of who?
I don't think you can. I think Arteta, one of the things that has been the successful blueprint for him this season has been the consistency in his starting 11. It's why Tomiyasu didn't start, because Tomiyasu's had a couple of games. He came on against Man United for the second half. He basically shared a match with Ben White for Man United, and he was probably the better performer in that game. And then he's played against Man City, and he was very, very good. And so, to me, that's almost at the point where you're saying, well, if he's going to go full Pep and rotate based on certain types of games and things like that, then it probably was a game where you could have potentially said, Tomiyasu, I'm not answering the question, but I will get to it. It's more, I guess my point is, Martinelli has not done enough to lose the shirt yet, I don't think. And what impact does it have on a player who's just signed a new deal, who's on cloud nine, who we all love, if he just drops him for Trossard? I think it was the right call to play him. I think he'll play against Brentford, Martinelli. But what we need to see, which is exactly what we wanted when we were talking about the January transfer window, is options. So if it's not working for Martinelli against Brentford, then Trossard can come on and get 30 minutes, 25 minutes, 20 minutes. That's fine. That's how it should work. And if it happens like that for 4 or 5 games in a row, then we've got that option, Trossard, to say, do you know what, Martinelli, Gabby, you come off and you're going to get the 20 minutes to be an impact player, and Trossard can start. That's how you make champions. Like, I don't want to start talking up championship concept, like the title, because I'm still not on the train. But for me, Trossard, not quite yet, because he's only just joined. Martinelli has played well all season. He's got to play 4 or 5 games where we're a bit question marking him before we start to say, let's get Trossard in.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks, everyone, for their comments. So, welcome to the show, Gary Pepperman. Gary is actually a personal friend of ours, me and Carl, and was with me at the Invincibles that night. So nice to see you. Definitely move Martinelli to the middle. It clearly wasn't working for him yesterday. Seems to be a lot of this, Cookie, doesn't it? And my point was at the beginning, does Arteta change it enough? When we're losing? I mean, obviously, when this situation's happening, do you feel he made the right substitutions yesterday?
I think, just going back to my previous point, he's just got to show a little bit more imagination in those situations. And if we are losing the game 1-0, then just just go for it a little bit more and keep as many attacking options on the pitch as possible. And that might come at the sacrifice of the structure and balance of the team, but at least you've got a bit of chaos on the pitch. And I don't feel we had that chaos factor yesterday, which has been so good for us this season. I mean, you look at the goal we scored against United in the last minute, that just came from absolute anarchy, basically. So if we're able to do that a little bit more, and I think he will learn to do that, because he's trying to find that balance of when and where to make the substitutions, because he got it wrong earlier on in the season at United when he brought everybody on at once in pursuit of trying to get a win in that game when we really didn't have to. And yesterday, I think, it was just a little bit too, not conservative, because he did make changes. Like, let's give credit where it's due. He did make changes, and people have been critical of him not making enough changes this season. But it's just that they were a little bit too like for like. I thought the Tomiyasu one in the last 5 minutes, why? What's the point at that stage in the game? But like I say, when we've got someone like Smith Rowe on the bench, when we've got Jesus back in the team, when we've even got Nelson back in the team, that will provide us more attacking options. Because although we're very excited by the depth of our bench, there's still not many players you look to on there apart from Trossard as genuine attacking options. You've got Vieira, who I thought was good yesterday, but in terms of players that are going to really get into the final third and provide you with a goal or an assist, we've still not got a huge amount on there, bar Trossard, as I say. So we do need these players back in Smith Rowe and Jesus and Nelson. But yeah, I'm not going to criticise the substitutions too much. I think, like we alluded to earlier, there was a massive overreaction to Jorginho's performance. I mean, why? Why was there such a backlash to the 30 minutes he played? I couldn't get my head around that. I'm not going to pretend that he's a signing that I wanted. I wasn't overly enthused when we signed him. When the news broke, I kind of felt a bit defeated giving the news to Caicedo, but he's here, so I'm going to get behind him every time he puts an Arsenal shirt on and steps out on that pitch. So, yeah, I didn't really get the criticism he got, and I think if it was Caicedo that put in the performance that he did, would he have got that stick? I don't think so.
Of course not.
Can I just jump in on one thing on that? So on the Jorginho thing, the way that I think
I was going to come to that. Go on.
The way that I think everyone needs to look at it is Jorginho an upgrade on Mohamed Elneny? Because 2 weeks ago, that was our backup option to Partey, was Mohamed Elneny. Now, I don't know many Arsenal fans, maybe that a few people in the chat will prove me wrong, but I don't know many, and I certainly don't believe that Mohamed Elneny is a better footballer than Jorginho. And that's all we need to see this as. Jorginho has signed an 18-month contract. He is here for this season, and then because no footballer leaves a club and signs a 6-month contract, Arsenal have said, well, all right, we'll chuck an extra year on. And he's essentially been brought in as the Mohamed Elneny replacement. So for me, if you're talking about Elneny or Jorginho, it's Elneny. And Sambi wasn't working in the number 6, and we can send him out on loan to Crystal Palace. And hopefully he has a really, really good time at Crystal Palace and comes back a better footballer. To me, once I started thinking about it like that, Jorginho is just Elneny's replacement. I was like, well, we're already better off than we were. So people need to stop thinking about, oh God, Jorginho, why Jorginho, and focus on the player or his backstory, i.e. coming from Chelsea, and more focus on the fact that we've upgraded, albeit slightly, on Elneny.
So, Unique 79, welcome to the show, darling. I am sorry, but Jorginho is finished. I've seen a lot of that. I disagree. I am totally in tune with you, Chris, on this.
Chelsea fans didn't think he was finished because he played a lot, and a lot of them thought he was all right.
Yeah, and he's got experience again in the Champions League and winning things. It's not a bad acquisition to have as backup to Partey. Now, let's just talk about Thomas Partey yesterday. In the week, we were all plutzing, which means stress to the hill, that something was wrong with him. It came out that it wasn't. But he didn't look himself, did he, yesterday, could he? He didn't either. So I don't think any of them looked themselves. If I had to sit here now and name a man of the match, I honestly couldn't do it. Could you?
It's almost like they had lasagna or something. That was a bit dodgy.
No, I thought Partey was poor, and it's his worst performance of the season. I think we can all admit that. And if he's not 100%, probably shouldn't have started the game. And we brought Jorginho in for, moments when Partey isn't going to be at his best. And like I say, if he wasn't going to be 100% for this game, it might have been a more sensible move to have started Jorginho. But given that he's so new to the team, perhaps Arteta didn't want to take that risk so early on into his career. But it did feel very calculated when those substitutions came in the 60th minute, because it was bang on 60 minutes that Partey came off. So it did feel very much like it was a planned change. But, I've got to give him a bit of leeway because he's been absolutely sensational this season. So he's more than allowed one bad game, given how impeccable he's been, given that he was carrying a slight knock going into this game. So I'm hoping it's a one-off. I would say that his opening 10, 15, 20 minutes of games, I have thought he's looked a little bit sloppy in possession. The game against Spurs springs to mind. I thought he was pretty sloppy in the opening period of that game. And yeah, he can give the ball away in dangerous areas. He could be a little bit too elegant with it. And I think Everton, just every time he, tries to get the ball out of his feet, they just snapped at him every single time, and they were really quick at getting to him. And I think they just played on him having that that slight not full battery almost. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Nothing to be too disheartened about by his performance, but let's just hope he's raring to go after a full week of training, hopefully without a knock on Saturday.
So I disagree with Carl Stark, and I disagreed with him yesterday when he was saying this, that 80% Partey is better than anything else we have. We can't risk losing him, can we, Chris? We just can't. No,
and also elite football is such that literally marginal gains and tiny differences make a massive bit of difference. So a 90% or an 80% fully fit Thomas Partey is what we got yesterday. And the alternative, it's difficult, because if the alternative is someone like Jorginho in a match where you're away from home to a team that's going to intensively press you from so if Partey wasn't fully fit yesterday, and I think he might have been carrying a knock, I'm sort of disagreeing with Carl here, because I still wouldn't have started Jorginho, because Everton would have pressed him, they'd have put bodies on him, and we'd have been in trouble. But he's almost brought in. I think he came on yesterday purely because Partey wasn't fit, and Arteta wanted to get as much out of the tank from him as possible. So he thought to himself, if I can get 60 minutes, maybe we go a goal, 2 goals up, and then I'll bring him off, and Jorginho does the 300,000 passes, kill the game thing that Arteta's previously talked about. And that's where I think his head was at. Jorginho maybe against, if Partey's not fully fit next weekend at home to Brentford, you'd hope that that particular position shouldn't make a difference, because we will have more ball, we will have more possession, we will have more territory in the final third. And I wouldn't expect the same level of intensity that we got from Everton. That won't happen. That doesn't happen at the Emirates, because we're the ones that are in control. So for me, Jorginho, I'm not really got that much of a problem with it. There will be games, for example, City at home, in which you wouldn't want Jorginho anywhere near the start there. You'd need a fully fit Partey. And if bringing him off 30 minutes today, so he can get another week of training, like you said, Amanda, like get those, if he's got bruised ribs, for example, give him another week to just get those healed. Then, do you know what? Fine. Let's just take the L on this one. We haven't lost out in terms of points differential this weekend. Count our lucky stars. We go again next weekend.
I think that's it, isn't it, Cookie? I mean, whatever Carl says, I don't believe you should play a player that's slightly injured, especially not Partey. He's so important for our team. He's probably the most important player on that pitch for us, because in every other sort of position, like as we said with Martinelli and Trossard and so forth, we've got that. Jorginho against City sort of makes me feel a little bit nervous, if I'm honest, Chris. So I don't want to think about that at the moment. Yes, thanks everyone. Thank you, Unique79. I should have said this at the beginning. I'm really not good at promoting this show, honestly. Please like and please subscribe, because the algorithms on YouTube, if you like and subscribe, it doesn't cost you anything to subscribe. You'll get to see all our shows, and other people will as well. A lot of people have said to me this week, I didn't even realise you were doing a podcast. Whereas I think I advertise it so much on Twitter because people don't know about it. Well, I've been doing the podcast over a year now. So, and I've got some really good shows coming up, something very different for you all, which I'll talk about at the end. Okay, so we've sort of dissected yesterday. Bad day at the office. None of them turned up. It was what it was. We're not going to be perfect. We're going to get bumps in the road. Everybody knows that. Anyone with a brain would know that bumps are coming. We're now beginning of February, young cookie. And up next is Brentford. So and I totally agree with keeping a winning side. I've got no issues with who he started with yesterday. Absolutely not. But we've lost. So now tell me your 11 for Saturday, Cookie. If everyone's fit, of course.
I don't think I'd be in an immediate rush to change anything because that 11 is what we've built all the success on that we've had so far this season. So, I mean, this is put into perspective. I think this is our best start to a season, even better than the Invincibles. Our best ever start to a Premier League season. I think that was before yesterday. It might still be. I'm not too sure. But either way, 50 points from a possible 60 is insane. So you're not going to hear me complaining about that. I wouldn't be changing anything. I think there are a couple of players that I'm looking at and thinking, if it doesn't work against Brentford, then maybe we need to tinker with it ever so slightly. And that would be White, who I think was poor against United. I thought Benny shot a blanco yesterday. Pardon the pun. And I'd maybe look to bring Tomiyasu in because I think he's been fantastic. And then the other one would be Trossard for Martinelli because I thought Trossard was impeccable against City. And I really like the dynamic of him starting the game, then Martinelli coming on with all his flair and pace in the last 20 minutes to just wreak havoc. So those would be the two positions I'd be looking at, but I wouldn't be changing them just yet. That would be based on how they perform in this game. But I think we need to get our regular 11 at the absolute peak of their powers on Saturday because I want that 11 to be the one that starts against Manchester City on Wednesday. And then, if God forbid results don't go away in the next two games, then we probably have to start looking at tinkering going into the game away from home against Villa. But that's still a while away yet. Still two very big games to be played. But I wouldn't change too much just yet.
So, does anyone know who City have got next weekend before they play us? I don't know, actually. I'm sure you lot do. So you'd stick with the same team. I sort of get that. Christopher, would you, or any changes your side?
So I would. City have got Aston Villa on Sunday at the 4:30 kickoff. So we play first. So we get a win, and that takes us to 8 points clear, level on points. Although then
with the game in hand,
Unai Emery is doing quite a good job of. Unai Emery plays a very good underdog card. So, you never know. But I actually possibly would do what I'd probably change White for Tomiyasu. Like I know what Cookie was saying, but part of me thinks if you want to send a message to the squad, which is we have a collective of 16, 17 players who, if you are playing well, I will play you. And if I was Arteta, I think long and hard about potentially playing Tomiyasu. You could even potentially say, I'm going to play Tomiyasu because of form. Depending on what happens, you can then bring Ben White back in for the Man City game. But I just think that he's playing well. And it sends a message to the squad. And you could sit Ben White down and say, look, it's not so much you, but Tommy's come in and been brilliant when he's played. And I want to give everybody an opportunity here that deserves it. So that's why I'm starting him against Brentford. And then if we get a win, if he plays well, you've got the best of both worlds. You can then go to the Man City game with a Ben White fired up, trying to win or knowing that he needs to keep his place. And so therefore you could play him. Or if Tomiyasu is brilliant against Brentford, you then say to Tomiyasu, all right, you can keep it for Man City. So, and also, if you think about Kieran Tierney as well on the other flank, he might be looking at that and saying, oh, wait a second, Tomiyasu got in. So this isn't a closed shop. And he's not just going to keep the same team each week. Because if Tomiyasu is playing well enough and he gets in over Ben White, then I've got a chance of Zinchenko. So it could potentially fire up Tierney as well. So that's why in my head, I'm like, I quite like the idea of just flipping, maybe even if it's just for one game, just flipping Tomiyasu in at Brentford?
I think quickly as well, just on the mention of Tierney, for me, he had his best game of the season away at Brentford earlier this year. Last year. So if there was one change that I think we could make that could be relatively risk-free, Tierney for Zinchenko might not be the worst shout in the world.
Also, the whole idea of the rotation. So we're playing just 3 games in just over a week. So he's going to have to get used to using his squad. So maybe he's going to look at the Brentford game and say, do you know what? A couple of tweaks. If we can get the job done against Brentford with a couple of tweaks, happy days.
And it's not like they're bad guys that are coming in either. I mean, Trossard coming in, no issues with that. Tomiyasu, Tierney coming in. I mean, these are guys that were pivotal to us last season. If when we lost them towards the end of the campaign, we were all up in arms, and ultimately one of the reasons why we didn't get top 4 was because of Tierney and Tomiyasu being out injured. So if they came in, I wouldn't have any issues with that with Brentford at home.
Okay, so one of the things that might go in our favour slightly, we play at home 3 o'clock on Saturday and we play at home Wednesday night. They've got a day less recovery. They are away to Birmingham. They've got to get down to London. So let's just hope that gives us a little bit more breathing space.
I think they're at home.
They're at home. They're at home.
Yeah. So they're at home in Manchester, then come down to London, but they're playing like over a day later. So I'm trying to hang on to anything. Listen, we've got to stop talking about the City game. We're going to be back here next Sunday night talking about Brentford, and then we can talk about City. Let's just focus on Brentford, because it's really important we do not sit here and go, Brentford's a done deal. Let's talk about City, because that's the big one. We don't want to do that. Thanks to everyone in the chat. We've had over 100 tonight. That's absolutely amazing. Thanks for joining us. We are going to try and keep it to Sunday nights at 7:30. Obviously, when we're not playing late on a Sunday, we're going to try and keep it to that. Thank you all for joining us. It would be really lovely to know where you're all from. We love to know where all the global fans are. So moving on, let's just do a couple of questions. Anyone got any questions?
Can I jump in with just a question? I'll have a question for you two guys, if that's all right.
Okay, go on.
Do you think there was a touch of arrogance about the way that we played yesterday? Because before the match, I was on a couple of WhatsApp groups, and particularly when the lineups were announced, and it was almost like, Sean Dyche going against a 4-5-1, low block, we're in for a slog. Do you think there was a touch of arrogance about the way that we set up? Because part of me is a bit like, maybe there was, because maybe we should have adapted, because we seem to just play the same way that we've played all season, and just maybe the arrogance of it's worked all season, so it'll work again today.
No, I didn't think they were arrogant at all. Just don't think they turned up.
I think there's a very, very slight touch of complacency creeping in. I'm not sure if that was. I'm not sure if I thought about that yesterday. I just thought yesterday we just weren't good enough. We got beaten by the better side. And like I said before, it's just one of those performances I never want to see again. But I think when I first saw that bit of complacency creeping in was maybe against Spurs, when Martinelli hit it off his back, which, is hilarious. It's great. Obviously, if we lose the game after that, it's not so funny. But I'm not a huge fan of things like that. I know it's great to see, especially, when you're doing it away at Spurs. But for me, I just want us to keep our heads down, stay as humble as possible. And, if we've won the league with a couple of games to spare, then do what you want. Nutmeg everyone, put on a Anthony masterclass. But for now, just keep your heads down, play our football, and just don't let any sort of arrogance creep into your mind whatsoever.
No, I agree. So I'm just going to tell everybody where everyone's from. We got Dash, who's from Bangalore in India, Michael from Trinidad and Tobago. We've got Cole downstairs here in the lounge, Atlanta, Bracknell. I mean, honestly, this is why I love this show. So our overseas fans can interact with us. Because I tell you what I noticed last game, boys. We haven't spoken since the United match, have we? Did we speak about United? I've never seen the ground so filled in all my life. Every single club level seat was filled. That has never happened before. I don't know what it was like down.
You can't get tickets these days.
No,
I'm asking around. Like I normally, so I'm in block 5, and I've got lots of mates, and every single season I've been at the Emirates, I've been able to at least find tickets. If someone says, "Oh, you couldn't get me a ticket," normally it's quite easy. You ask them around. Yeah, I don't mind giving up mine, whatever it is, but can't get tickets at the moment.
No, you can't. But what I'm trying to say is, Chris, club level, they're normally inside having a glass of wine watching the game. There's loads and loads and loads of. I couldn't see one in the whole stadium, and it is fantastic. But where was everyone when we weren't doing that well? Do you just support the club when they're doing well? Then I don't know. That's not how I was brought up, so I don't know. Melissa says I'm in a posh. Where are you? I'm from North Yorkshire. I love it all. It's lovely to know where everybody's from. Thank you for joining us. Right. Okay. Let's have some predictions, Cookie, for Saturday, and then got a couple of other bits to talk about.
Okay, Saturday. So important we win. I do think it will be a tough game against a very good Brentford side that are doing some remarkable things this season. But I think that game yesterday will have spurred us on to be more determined than ever to hopefully get a win. Don't think it'll be easy, but a resolute, good showing, 2-0 win all day long.
Right, so Cookie, you're 2-0. Chris?
What I want is rage. I want incredulity that another football team dared beat us. And so what I want is for that Arsenal team on Saturday to come out and effing pummel Brentford. However, I think it's going to be tighter than we would like. And I have a suspicion that it might be more like a 2-1 Arsenal.
And that's what I've written down for me. 2-1 Arsenal, because I can see Brentford scoring first. I said this against United. Couple of questions for you. Cookie, you can answer this. Do you think that the intensity we have played at the most of the season is catching up with the team? That was from Karen. Hi, Karen.
Great question. I think it's really hard to base that off a one-off game yesterday. I think it was more that Everton's intensity was just through the roof. And we have played with great intensity, great pressing, but Everton were just better at it yesterday. I don't think that's to say ours was necessarily poor, but if we were to maybe see that level of intensity drop off against Brentford, then I think that's a more than valid question that we could talk about a little bit more. But I think it's just at the minute, I don't think we need to overanalyze yesterday. I really don't. I just think got to put it down as one of those games that didn't go our way on the day. The narrative was there for it to go against us. It went against us. We lost to the better team. Let's just sweep it under the carpet, swallow it, like I say, and get back to the Arsenal that we know on Saturday.
Thank you for your question, Karen. John Rowe. Hi, John. This is for you, Chris. Would you rest Saka on Saturday, remembering this might disrupt Brentford's to double up on him and he looks tired?
Never in a million month of Sundays would I rest Saka in the slightest. What needs to happen is that if he's being doubled up on, he needs to have other players around him. What he needs to have, and this is, I guess it might be going against what I was saying earlier in terms of playing Tomiyasu, but what we didn't do enough of yesterday was White on the overlap. Because if White's running on the overlap, then it puts question marks in the defenders. They can't double up on Saka if they can see White on the overlap, because Saka can just touch the ball back to Odegaard, who can then find White on the overlap. So for me personally, no. But I've just completely undermined my own argument about playing Tomiyasu there and saying we should play Ben White because Tomiyasu doesn't overlap like Ben White does.
Okay, thank you for your question. Let's see if we've got anything else. Right, let me just have a look at their predictions. Richard's gone 2-0 Arsenal.
We also have, sorry to interrupt, we also have a full week now of rest. So
yeah,
not rest, but of training. So it's not like we're playing in midweek.
No. Unique 3-1 Arsenal, 2-1 from Nigel, 3-0 home win. I think it's safe to say that everyone, Fiona's 2-1, Simon Leicester 2-0. We are very positive that we're going to win next week. So also, guys, by the time we get to Brentford, I've been told that every part of the stadium will be wrapped in the new artwork. What's your opinion of some of it already, Chris?
I think it's amazing. I think it is you have to give flowers to the club for really connecting with the fans and the community, the history, the legacy of Arsenal. And football is, if it's nothing if it's not about history and remembering who you are and who you represent. You know, when I go to football, even when we were terrible under the darkest days of the Unai Emery era, you know, I'd still go to the football and I'd still talk about. Do you remember those really good FA Cup days that we used to go to, and we'd all have a drink and have a good time? It's those memories that essentially help to define our football supporting life. And so by being able to epitomize that on the stadium, every time I go there now, you're going to look at that and you're going to be like, this is lovely. It was lovely when they did all of the players like with their sort of linked in arms on the actual ground, where you've got Brady and Seaman and stuff like that all linked. I think that was a fantastic touch by the club. So you have to give nothing but kudos.
Cookie, do you feel the same? You're looking forward to seeing it next week?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the exact same for me. And just to echo what Chris says, it just really connects the fans with the club, and it just feels right. I think what the Emirates has maybe lacked ever so slightly is just a little bit of personality, and this just fills me with vibrancy. And can't wait to see it in person. It's a lovely touch by the club, and it just kind of epitomizes everything the club have done right this season in terms of connecting with the fans, making everyone feel so together. So yes, it's a great move, and I can't wait to see it on Saturday.
The Highbury one is my favourite. It would not shock you both, but the Highbury one on the East Stand, and it bends round to the North Bank as well. It's the East Stand upper front fascia, and I just can't wait to see it. It's just going to be fantastic. It'll be lovely to watch it. And you're right, Cookie, it did lack atmosphere. It certainly doesn't lack atmosphere inside the grounds anymore, and now we've got it outside. We've got like the perfect stadium. It is class. It's very classy what they've done. It's lovely they've included the women as well, and I think it's going to look even better than the pictures we've seen, because I've not seen anything bar pictures. So yeah, looking forward to it. Guys and girls, thank you so much for a fantastic show. Thank you for everyone in the chat room, everyone that's commented. You know, it's been fantastic. Really enjoyed chatting to you both. Cookie and Chris, we'll be back next Sunday at 7:30. But before we go, I'm doing some special shows on Thursday nights. The next 4 Thursday nights, I've got some very different guests coming on. Now, you may love him or you may hate him, but he's actually a friend of mine, and he's coming on next Thursday night at 7:30. And before you say anything, why don't you come and listen to him? So I have got Robbie from our Arsenal Fan TV coming on a one-to-one chat with me next Thursday night at 7:30. The week after is even, they just get better and better each week. So 7:30, please subscribe. That will come up on your in your subscription or whatever it is they do on YouTube. You know me, I'm so not IT. I thank you again. Look, great show, Amanda, Cookie, Chris. Thanks, Mark. Fiona's enjoyed it. Ames's enjoyed it. It's been lovely. Please hit the like button. Please come back next week. And I look forward to seeing you Thursday night. And Rich the Gooner, if you would like to ask him that, I will be asking Robbie plenty of questions. Don't you worry. It won't be a loving, okay? So, but he is a mate of mine, and he's agreed to come on. That will never, ever, ever happen, Amesy, in my lifetime of being on the Same Old Arsenal podcast. Don't you worry. Guys and girls, it was a bad day at the office. It doesn't matter, because Tottenham, our mates down the road, did us a favour, beat City. We're 5 points clear. I've got to go and have a shower because I was supporting Tottenham for 90 minutes. We're 5 points clear, game in hand, top of the league, early February. What can I say? Thank you for joining us. Glad you all enjoyed the show. See you all next week. Thanks, guys. Always Arsenal.